Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. I have some questions about DJI drones, if the relevant officials are available. On the 30th of March, I submitted a question on notice about this, which was due for response by the 1st of May, but has not been received yet. I wonder if officials have that answer to hand.
Was this through the Parliament, Senator Patterson, or through the committee?
It was through the Parliament, Chair. Minister.
Sometimes our accounting for these two streams of questioning is different.
Understood.
Senator Patterson, Celia Perkins, Deputy Secretary, Security and Estate. I can certainly answer questions on DJI drones. I'd start by saying that the way that we manage drones is quite a complex set of different kinds of capabilities. I'll talk from a securities perspective. I think I don't have visibility of the question on notice that you're referring to, but
Sure.
we will take that on notice for you.
But do you know how many DJI drones Defence is operating?
Defence is currently operating no DJI drones.
Yes, that's a good technical answer, but how many DJI drones does Defence have?
I don't have a number for you. We could take that on notice. We, as I said, would offer for the committee that we believe there were some hundreds being used in a variety of uses across Army, Navy, Air Force, Defence Science and Technology groups and some of the cadet elements.
Okay. If you don't have visibility of the exact number, who would have visibility of that?
I think, Senator, what will be best is for us to take that on notice. In my evidence there are currently none. After we looked at the DJI drone issue, the Secretary and CDF issued a directive to cease their operation.
Yeah.
We've sent that out. I know that we have looked at where they are and how they were being managed, and we've asked everyone to stop using them. That would require us to be going out really, because they are a small consumable device. They can be locally purchased and people have been using them, for instance, in cadet units. Sure.
Look, and I will look forward to that full detail on notice. But just quickly, you said you're not familiar with the question on notice, so it obviously has gone to someone else to provide the answer then, if not you or your team. Who would be looking after it?
Senator, can we get back to you on that?
Okay. All right. As you said, the Secretary and the CDF have issued a direction that they be grounded, which was reported in The Australian on the 5th of May. The Pentagon took the same decision in October last year. Why was it only in May this year that we took the same decision?
Senator, as I mentioned when we were speaking earlier, Commonwealth security policy and defence security policy works in a slightly different way to the way our Five Eyes partners sometimes operate. So we undertake technical risk assessments based on the equipment we might be using and where and how we might be using it, and undertake those security risk assessments to determine if there's a technical risk. My understanding of the United States Department of Defence ceasing to use these derives from a slightly different kind of framework. So it's based on a Department of Commerce methodology they use around foreign device. And my understanding of the listing of DJI is based on a number of factors, primarily around on what they call their entities list, DJI's engagement with the PLA and involvement in civil use in China.
Yes, there are, as I understand it, there are two separate directions in the US system which originate from different agencies for different reasons. It was already a sanctioned company previously because of its involvement in the mass surveillance and human rights abuses of Uyghur people in Xinjiang in cooperation with the Chinese government. And then a subsequent assessment was also made that the US government believes that the company is effectively controlled by the People's Liberation Army, and that is what led to the hard ban that was announced in October. There were already previous restrictions. But my question still stands, regardless of whether they have gone about it in a different means or for slightly different reasons. Nonetheless, our closest security ally made a decision in October last year that they could not be safely operated, and it wasn't until May this year that we came to a similar conclusion. What's the reason for the lapse in time between those two decisions?
Senator, I couldn't give you a specific reason. We're constantly looking at our security settings. As I said, our system is based on risk assessment of the device in use and where and how it's being used. The Minister mentioned earlier the broader review of supply chain security. We're working through that now. The defence supply chain is extremely complex and has many hundreds of millions of items in it. And I mentioned also earlier the work with the Attorney-Generals on the Technical Security Forum. And so we're working through these issues at pace. And as I say, I think it's important that, first we review the security risk assessments, then we can make some broader judgments. Part of the supply chain review that we're undertaking will be looking really closely at the security systems in the United States and the United Kingdom so that we can benchmark and learn best practice approaches that they might be using that are different to us. We do this routinely. And I think we're in a really good spirit of cooperation to keep learning from each other. But as I said, we have quite different systems. The United States has a domestic manufacturing base.
Sure.
And this is a constant and active process across government.
Was there any communications with our American friends after their decision in October? Is there a mechanism by which that kind of information is shared?
No, there's not a direct mechanism. We routinely engage with security officials. You'll appreciate that the very large volumes of information across very many different capability types. So while we routinely engage, I'm not aware of any direct communication from them to us on this issue, but we do monitor decisions they take and then work them back through our policy settings.
But in this case, obviously, action was not triggered by them, given that they took this decision in October and we didn't take the decision till May. The decision did appear to be taken after the questions on notice that I submitted and also after a media inquiry from Ellen Winnett at the Australian newspaper went into the Defence Minister's office. Was it in response to a direction from the Defence Minister's office that the drones were grounded?
I'd have to take that on notice, Senator Patterson.
Perhaps the CDF or the Secretary can assist, given that they made the direction. Did the Minister's office direct you to do that?
Senator Patterson, I think that the CDF and I took the decision just based on the information that Ms Perkins and others provided to us. I'd need to check to see. I don't recall any direction from the Minister.
Sure. When did, Ms Perkins, when did you provide that advice to the CDF and the Secretary?
Look, I've been working this with my colleagues who have the elements using these devices. We worked that up, I think. I'm just trying to find the date at which we got the direction out there. Again, we start with a risk assessment. We did that on these devices some time ago about how we thought they might be accruing risk to us, and then on the benefit, on the balance of the information we were able to ascertain, worked with the Secretary and CDF's officers on a joint directive, and I'm just struggling to find it here.
The media reported the directive on the 5th of May. I don't know if that was when it was issued, but that's when it was reported.
It was issued on the 5th of May, yep.
Yep. So when did you provide the advice?
We were working that in the background. I was working on the broader policy issues around supply chain security and technical risk. My colleagues in Army as one of the core leads on, as I said, drones are treated in a range of different ways, from counter, unmanned aerial systems.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
So I personally didn't provide specific advice on that directive.
Right. Well, I understood from the Secretary's answer that advice was provided by you or your team. Is that correct, Secretary? Was it in writing?
Senator, I think it was iterative. I mean, we've discussed these issues with Ms Perkins, but also others in the department over quite a period of time.
I imagine there were lots of ongoing discussions, but at any point was any written advice provided that the drone should be grounded?
I'll take that on notice, Senator.
Okay. If you could, the date of that, and if it could be provided to the committee, that would also be helpful. There's a broader kind of policy issue here, which is that this does appear to be a little bit reactive. In the case of the cameras, now in the case of the drones, it seems after questions get asked, work gets done and decisions get made, and I'm thankful that the right decisions are being made to manage these risks. But how are we proactively assessing these so that we don't just have to wait for the next round of questions on notice or the next media inquiry to get rid of the next high-risk authoritarian technology vendor? Secretary?
Senator Patterson, I think I've already provided evidence about the supply chain security audit, and officials are in a position to talk through how that is unfolding. But I make the point I made earlier that these are not new issues. They were canvassed by both government and opposition senators while the coalition government was in place and not addressed in a systematic way. In contrast, a systematic approach has been requested by the DPM, and officials can talk you through how that is unfolding.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Senator. Yeah, look, I think we do have a different security system to the United States, and we work closely across government to understand how threats and risks might evolve over time and how we need to respond to that. Our technical risk-based system has served us very well, but in response to the Deputy Prime Minister's directions, we've been working through a comprehensive approach that will undertake in multi-phases to look deeply into the defence supply chain and to establish the policy criteria to deal with emerging threats and risks. I think it's important in doing that we understand this will cut across really important equities across government. I've mentioned already the intelligence-led advice on how threats accrue. That's critical to us. But also we'll work closely with colleagues in other parts of government on broader security settings, our obligations under free trade agreements and so forth. So it'll be complex work. What we've proposed to the Deputy Prime Minister is sort of a multi-phased approach. We'll start with doing some work with our colleagues in the United States and the United Kingdom on their systems. We'll be working through those policy settings. We'll be working with capability managers across defence to sample elements of their supply chains. Really importantly, much of our supply chain is in fact managed by our industry partners. We've been doing work for some years to illuminate those supply chains and to understand where risk might accrue and whether our security settings are appropriate. So we'll be starting from a strong base, but I just stress to the committee that this will be detailed and complex work, probably running into the hundreds of millions of items throughout the defence inventory. Yeah,
look, I appreciate it is a big task, but it's also a very important one given the strategic environment we're in. We cannot be relying on a potential adversary state to supply key technology used by our men and women in uniform with all the risks that entails. So if we're in agreement that there is a need for a more proactive system that assesses these risks, when can we expect that would be in place, and we don't have to keep thinking of the next high-risk technology company to submit questions on notice about?
Thank you, Senator. So, as I said, we've proposed an approach to the Deputy Prime Minister. We did that in deep consultation across all of our capability managers and our delivery agencies to make sure that, and our logistics agencies, to make sure that we'd fully understood the complexity and the pace in which we can deliver. But we're going to move really fast.
When did you put that proposal to the DPM?
I think that was last week. We finalised the advice. We've been working on it for a number of weeks.
Great. And when can we expect, what's the process from here? Does the DPM, is this a decision for the DPM? Does it need to take it to Cabinet or NSC? What's the process?
No, I believe this is absolutely a direction the Deputy Prime Minister's already given us. We've proposed an approach to this work. We're starting work now, and we'll adjust obviously based on his advice. Just to confirm that, Ms Perkins, I think my understanding is that the advice has been provided to the DPM and that he will consider it.
Yep, that's good. So by the time we come back in estimates in a few months' time, should we expect this to be in place and operating as intended?
I think the timing is a matter for the Deputy Prime Minister, and it is dependent on the response, his response and his evaluation of the advice that's been provided to him and the options that are before him.
Yeah, and that's why I direct this to you, Minister. I assume that DPM would want to move pretty swiftly on this. It's a serious issue. Can we expect that by the time we come around to estimates next time that we've seen progress and there's a new system in place?
I think that the officials have given you advice that this is complex work that requires the department and the services to engage with what is characterised as an extensive, diverse and complex supply chain. I don't intend to put a time frame on it. Those are questions for the DPM and the officials have indicated to you that advice is before him.
Okay. Well, I will look forward to any progress that you are able to report at the next estimates. Thank you, Chair.